Good afternoon, everybody. It is Wednesday, December 9th, and I wanted to say Wednesday, December 8th because apparently I'm a little confused, but it's the 9th. And this is Women in Business. Today we're going to talk about how we talk about women. And this was inspired, as many of these talks are, by something that went on in the Women in Garment Decoration group. And I'm going to put up that URL just so you can see it. If you're not a member of the group, you really should be, because it's a great group with a lot of supportive women, and we have a lot of good discussions there, like the one that sparked this podcast, which was about how we talk about women. So that is what I want to talk about today. And what I want to start with is something that honestly I hadn't really even thought about until I started doing research, which is literally how we describe women when we're describing them to someone else. And this could be for a job, for a date, as to become a friend, whatever it is. When you describe a woman to someone else, what we tend to start with is appearance. She's a lovely woman. She's a gorgeous woman. She has great hair. She has the best smile. All these things that are all appearance related. And honestly, I didn't even think about this until I started doing some reading. And then I was like, that happens a lot. And it isn't only when you're talking about someone as a potential romantic partner or date or whatever it is, but just think about if you're describing a woman to someone else that you either want to have meet this woman or think about her for a job or whatever it is, or even if you're just describing her in general terms as, hey, I know this person. Probably most of the time you're going to start out with something appearance related. She's gorgeous, she's lovely, she's got, like I said, a great smile, she has the best hair, whatever it is. You're probably not going to say, oh, she's really smart, or she's so funny, or she's very witty, or she's really knowledgeable about this particular subject, or whatever it is. And when you think about it, a lot of the compliments that we give women are appearance related as well. You're so pretty. I like your hair. I like your shoes. I like your bag. We tend to concentrate on how women look instead of what they do or what they bring to the table as far as intelligence or wit or humor or compassion or any of that sort of stuff. So that's something to really think about, especially when you start looking at how you're speaking to younger women, your daughters, your nieces, the children of your friends, all these kind of things. Because if young girls are always getting the message that what matters about them is their appearance, then number one, they become hyper-focused on their appearance, which can be a really bad thing. If you start thinking that your appearance is all that matters about you, it's especially hard if you're a female who maybe feels like you don't measure up for whatever the standard or to whatever the standard might be, or if you're someone who, is overweight or isn't particularly considered attractive or whatever it is, then it's like whatever other qualities you have that you could bring to the table don't matter as much as whether you're considered pretty or beautiful or gorgeous or lovely or whatever the phrase is. So you want to try to balance out the comments, because you don't want to leave young women feeling like they're substandard in appearance, because that does its own kind of damage. Take it from someone who grew up being told that she was substandard in appearance. You end up with kind of a chip on your shoulder about that now. So you want to try to find a balance between saying, oh, I really like the way you did your hair today, and, oh, your smile's so pretty or whatever, but also compliment, hey, it was so smart how you figured out that problem in science, or, I really liked how nice you were to that new kid that was in the park today. It was great that you played with them when nobody else would. And try to balance it out. And I like this comment from Carolyn. Hi, Carolyn. I kind of fall into that. When I see my daughter, I say, oh, you look so nice today. Like what? I look like crap other days, she says back to me. I like that, and that's a good answer. But it tends to be what society tells us to focus on, and it tends to be what we go to with women. Now, that's not to say that, when you talk about men, you don't say, oh, he has great eyes or great hair or a great laugh or whatever it is, because you might do that too. But guys tend to be described as with other attributes, and women tend to be more appearance related. Hi, Lisa. Yes, I can see this is you. You're fine. And hello, Martha. Thank you for being here. And hello, Cindy. Thank you for being here. I appreciate it. Well, I don't know that that's true, Lisa. It doesn't have to be hard to think of something else to say to a little girl besides "you're so cute." I mean, yeah, your go-to with little kids is, "Oh, you're so cute." But there are other things that you can say. You just have to think about it a little more. And I don't think that there's anything wrong with saying to a little girl or a little boy, for that matter, "You're so cute." I've said it to a ton of little kids. But I think we need to balance it out so it isn't always something appearance related. It's the same thing with, you see a lot of times, if you're reading anything that says, how to make a woman feel better, they'll say compliment her shoes or compliment her bag. And I'm like, yes, people like their bags and their shoes. They wouldn't wear them if they didn't. But does it have to be that? Doesn't have to be that. And there is a Facebook user here. I'm going to tell you all, if StreamYard isn't showing you for whatever the reason, you can go to StreamYard.com/Facebook and give them permission, and they will. So please do that if I can't see your name. But in the meantime, I'm going to put this up. I also think we tell our daughters things like that to help them have a positive image about themselves. And yes, that's true. But a positive image has to be more than what you look like. A positive image has to be, you're also smart, and you're compassionate, and you're funny, and you solve problems really well, and you're helpful, and it's got to be the full gamut of things. And women are much more than men, I think we can all acknowledge this, valued for what they look like, sometimes over anything else. And that's a double-edged sword, because like I said, if you're someone who did not necessarily, or isn't considered necessarily, a raving beauty, or you're someone who wasn't raised to have confidence in yourself. So yes, I will agree. There does need to be a certain amount of ego boosting about appearance, because appearance does matter in this society. And if you're constantly told that you're not measuring up and you won't measure up, then that causes its own issues. But there's got to be a balance between the two. Carolyn said, you can never say to a guy, wow, you look handsome today. No drinks are not coming, or I am not marrying you. And their wife goes, hey, back off, chick. I'm not sure I agree with that either. I think in the right spirit, you can say you look handsome to a guy. I've done it. And his wife didn't really matter. It didn't really bother her. I think you have to know the people. But honestly, I don't think you should be commenting on anybody's appearance unless you're fairly comfortable with the people and you know how they're going to take it. But I think we do need to look at the way that we describe women and how we tend to go to physical attributes. Great hair, great smile, she's lovely, she's gorgeous, and not she's smart, she's really funny, she's really witty, she's just the best friend, she's so compassionate, all these kind of things. So that's the first thing that I wanted to kind of throw out there, which is, like I said, one that hadn't really occurred to me until I started doing my research today. And then I was like, hey, that does happen a lot. we do tend to describe women, particularly when we're trying to tout women as dateable. Then it's, oh, she's so cute. She's so, you know, she's so pretty. She's got great hair. She's got a good smile. And it's like, and okay, so men can tend to be appearance oriented. Fine. Women can too. So I'm not bashing men on that one. I mean, you know, but there has to be other qualities besides how you look. God, I hope so, because otherwise I'm in trouble. But anyway, that's the first thing I wanted to talk about. The next thing that I want to bring up is a phrase that I cordially hate, and I want to talk about why. And that's this. Hate this. Hate this word. Hate it, hate it, hate it, hate it, hate it. And I'm going to tell you why, because I'm sure you're all on the edge of your seats wondering why I hate this word. So, girl boss. Coined, I don't know. There was a woman who wrote a book whose name escapes me at the moment, who I think kind of coined the phrase a little bit. And she ran a company for a while that I think is ended up going bankrupt or something and does not exist anymore. Though apparently there's now a series on Netflix based on the book Girl Boss, which this woman wrote. But anyway. And the premise of and so people started picking it up, girl power, girl boss, all that kind of stuff. Here's why I don't like it. Think about what we call men who are considered the big bosses, who are considered the guys who are really successful in the world. Captains of industry, titans, if you want to be vulgar about it, big swinging dicks. You know, I mean, they have very bold, world-striding sort of titles. We don't call them boy bosses. We never would. It just wouldn't occur to us to do that. These guys get big, strong-sounding titles. Now, I have to ask you this. If you think of the word girl boss, what kind of woman are you picturing? Because I have to say, when I hear the word girl boss, or when I see the word girl boss, what I think of is, you know, someone who's wearing a flirty little floral skirt and some cute peep toe shoes, and she's kind of skipping around an office, sort of running things, and she giggles a lot, and it's kind of high-pitched. And she says, like, a lot. That's just what I think of. And granted, I hate this word, so. But it cuts us down as women, is what I think. Think about it. When in the South, when white Southerners during the slavery era and during the Jim Crow era, and probably some racist Southerners still today, when they wanted to diminish African American adults, particularly men, they called them boys. And the women were girls. My girl, who works, you know, who's, well, a slave, but, you know, my girl will do that, or my boy will do that, or they just called them boy instead of a name. It's a diminishment. It's you're smaller, you're lower status, you're not as important. And, you know, you can make the case, wow, Cindy, Cindy says she doesn't think she's ever heard girl boss. Really? I'm kind of, and I have to laugh at Lisa here, because this is true. If you're touting a woman for a date and you say she has a great personality, yeah, it doesn't always get a good response, which is sad, because people tend to think of code as great personality for not very good looking. So that's kind of a sad way that we look at women and the world. Though, to be fair, if you describe a guy as having a great personality, people are probably going to think the same thing. So that's just kind of sad in general, because wouldn't you think that you want to date something? If you wanted to date someone, you'd want them to be smart and have a good personality. But anyway. Okay, Lisa, fair enough. Probably some racist Northerners or Midwesterners or West Coasters too. Don't slur the South, please. Well, have to take a little bit of issue with that, Lisa, because the South was where slavery was, and that's probably where it originated. I'm not going to say it doesn't happen in other parts of the world, but it was a linguistic quirk of the South. So I'm going to just leave that there. But anyway, the point I'm making, to get back to where I was going, is that girl boss, well, it sounds really empowering, just like girl power sounds really empowering. Girl power is empowering if you're 9, maybe. If you're 9, girl power works. If you're 29 or 39 or 49, girl power doesn't work as well. And if you're 29 or 39 or 49 and you're running your company or running your division, girl boss doesn't work as well. It's not a term that's really going to generate a whole lot of respect. And I know that it's one phrase, and like Lisa says, some people haven't probably even heard of it or have even seen it used. But how we talk about ourselves and how we allow other people to talk about us determines how we're perceived in the world. I don't want to be a girl boss. I'll be a boss. I'll be a captain of industry. I'll be a titan. I'll be an effective leader. I'll be any of those things you want to call me, but I'm not a girl boss. And I don't want to be a girl boss. I'll be the lady in charge. And I don't really, lady boss, woman boss, whatever it is, I don't really like any of those. I don't think it needs a qualifier. Just be the boss. You don't need a qualifier. But girl boss just bugs me because it's also a symptom of something that women do a lot. And that's diminish their accomplishments or diminish themselves. Make themselves smaller so they're more acceptable and they're not threatening. Girl boss is not threatening. Girl boss is cute, which is another phrase when used in regards to women that I tend to want to punch people in the face when they do that. But it's kind of one of those things where the way we talk about women and the way women talk about themselves has developed over years and years and years and years. So, you have to be aware of what's happening before you can fix it. And things like girl boss are just a symptom of women trying to be powerful but still acceptable. Instead of just saying, I'm powerful and I'm the boss, we become girl bosses because girl bosses are not threatening. Girl bosses are acceptable somehow. So it's about how you talk about yourself. It's about how the society in general talks about women in leadership roles and women who are running things. And like I said, if you look at how men are described, we don't have boy bosses. Men would never even think that they would need a word like that. They're just the boss. They don't need a qualifier. So why do women? It's a question. I think we need to answer that. And I agree with you, Carolyn. I like Valkyrie, pretty badass. I like Valkyrie too. Maybe we should try to get that going. But I think we need to look at things like girl boss, why it came about, what it actually means. Is it really empowering, or are we making ourselves smaller and more acceptable? And does boss even need a qualifier? Could we just have said, I'm the boss? Is being a girl boss different than being a regular boss? That's a question. Does it need to be different? Should it be different? I mean, there's all sorts of ramifications to all this stuff. And a lot of times we don't think about it. And girl power and girl boss, girl power, I do like for young women, for girls. I think that actually has a utility. But I think when you get to women's status, you don't need to use girl power anymore. I don't like girl boss at all. That's just my opinion. And the reason I really don't like it is because I think it's a way to make being the boss and being female more palatable, and maybe to make the accomplishments smaller. And so I don't care for it. And hi, Sandy Joe. Thanks for joining us. I appreciate it. So let's talk about another word that shows up a lot in when women talk about what they're doing, the work that they've done. And that's a very innocuous little word called we. And how this impacts women is if you are in a business setting, or if you're on a committee, or if you're on a team of any kind, women will say, whether or not it's actually true, we did this. I do this all the time. When I refer to Enmart, and when I talked about Enmart when I worked there, I would say we did things. We did this, we did that. We set up a social media platform. We didn't do anything. I did it. But I wouldn't say I did it. It was we, like we were a collective, like the team was pitching in. Now, the problem with this innocuous little 2-letter word called we is that if you're, again, it's an attempt to be less threatening. It's an attempt to be nice. It's an attempt to play nicely with others and be inclusive and not look like you're hogging the credit. The problem with that is in a situation like a corporation, or if you're on a committee or on a team somewhere, or if you're just running your own business and you're out in the world and you're talking about the stuff you did. People hear we and they don't give you the credit. And if you did it, you should get the credit for it, and you should want to take the credit for it. And again, if you talk to linguists who examine how men speak and how women speak, men will say I. Men don't have, most men, I'm not going to say all men, but most men have no problem saying I did this, and will sometimes say I did this when it was actually a we did this. But women, like I said, because they don't want to seem pushy, they don't want to seem like they're grabbing credit, they want to play nicely with others, they've been taught that women who brag are not as attractive or whatever it is, tend to say, we did it. And if we actually did it, if it was a team effort and equal contributions, then yay, we's great, go for it. But if it was your thing and you did it, then you deserve the credit for it, especially when that credit could reflect on performance reviews, raises, promotions, all that kind of stuff. Or when the credit reflects on you running your own business and being perceived as a force in your community or a force in your industry, or being eligible for awards, or being eligible to ask to speak, or to being asked to speak at a conference, or whatever the thing is. So it does matter whether we say we or we say I. And it also, another interesting thing that happens is the phenomenon, and this is kind of a we thing too, but in a different way. The phenomenon of a woman will propose something in a meeting setting, or on a committee or whatever it is, and a guy will back her up and basically reiterate the idea, not taking her idea, but just maybe amplifying the message. And then if you go and interview the people in the meeting afterwards, they will say it was the guy's idea. Just because, especially if the woman doesn't step in and say, you know, here's why I thought that, and amplify the conversation a little more. And a lot of women just go, oh, well, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who gets the credit for it. And that's a great attitude. And I think more people should feel that way. But at the same time, it does matter who gets the credit in certain situations, it really does matter who gets the credit. And speaking as someone who has a very hard time tooting my own horn, I can, tout the accomplishments of others all day, but I have a really hard time saying I did this thing and I think it's good. I think this is worth your time. You should pay attention to this because it's good, it's valuable. I have a really hard time. And I like this from Sandy Joe. I agree with we. Many, many times I have said we when it was me. Yeah, and I think I've done it too. And I think it's almost ingrained in us that, you're not supposed to put yourself in the forefront. You're not supposed to take credit. So, oh, this is a good one too. I like this. My favorite, not when a man is passionate, he is a great leader, but a woman is over emotional. So, yeah, you're actually saying my favorite, not. When a man is passionate, he is a great leader, but a woman is over emotional. Yes, it's all of that stuff that, women are taught to be collaborators, I think, a lot more than men are. So it's the same thing. If a man is really passionate about his project and really thinks it needs to go forward and we need to do this, then he's a great leader and wow, he's got so much passion for this project. If a woman does the same thing, then she's abrasive, she's a bitch, she's pushy, she's over emotional, all these things. And it's the exact same behavior for the exact same reason. So women get taught to soften it, to say we instead of I. And yes, Lisa, you're right. A woman is a bitch when she's a leader or passionate, or can be labeled that way. I think that's true. And that's a pejorative that we use against women a lot. Oh, she's a bitch. She's just. And Martha, you're not wrong. I was going to say that it is how we're built. Women have the grace to share credit and build others up. Men, not so much. Yes and no. I have known men who were great builders up of other people. That's a very awkward phrase, but it was the only way I could think of. One of the best mentors I ever had was a man who taught me an enormous amount and built up my confidence more than probably any other person, male or female, that I've ever met. He was amazing. But he was also very, very confident in himself. And he just wanted to find what people were good at and help them be better at it. He didn't care about gender. He just wanted everybody to be good. And he spent a lot of time, I can't speak anymore, developing a lot of people in the company, male and female. This is a good question. Empowers nature or nurture about men? I don't know. That's a good question because I think women are taught from probably their earliest years that you empower people, you nurture their creativity, you support them, you help them feel good about themselves. And men are taught, I think, to be more competitive. I think a lot of it depends on how you grow up and what the messages are that you receive and who's around you. Some of it depends on personality, I think. Some people are naturally more nurturing and some people are not so much. But, that's a good question too. And I think a lot of it is what you're taught to focus on. And men are taught to focus on getting ahead and advancing their own agenda, in a sense. And women are taught more to collaborate and support each other. And you don't want to put yourself out there, right? And you don't want to be, too pushy, and you don't want to get labeled a bitch, and you don't want to be too abrasive or, and you don't want to seem too sure of yourself because all those things can cause issues in your relations with other people. So the question becomes, Is it bad? Is it bad that women are taught to be more nurturing? Is it bad that women are taught to, or women tend to say we more and men tend to say I more? Bad's a relative term. And this is interesting. Let's see. Not intended as an absolute, but I do believe that men who have been in the company of men at work have competed more than anything. I think the difference in a good quarterback versus bad is how much they are about themselves versus how much they are about the team. And I agree with you totally, Martha. I think that's true. And I think that men are probably raised to be a lot more competitive in most arenas than women. Women are kind of raised, at least in the generation I grew up in, we're kind of raised more to be competitive a little bit with each other because we were all competing for men, supposedly, which don't even get me started. I lost that competition, by the way. And, you know, life happens, but that was, sad as it is to say, when I was growing up, that was one of the standards of whether you were successful, is if you landed a man. And I never wanted to land a man, and actually hated that whole mindset as soon as it was told to me, and probably went too far the other way because I was like, that just really annoyed me, that one of the sole arbiters of my worthiness as a person was whether or not somebody wanted to put a ring on it. And I thought, wow, there's a lot more to me than that. And nobody was telling the men that the standard of their worthiness was whether or not I was interested in marrying them. I was, any man would do, apparently. And yes, I realize this is my childhood, which I will admit was a little bit interesting. But I'm just saying, a lot of women in my generation, I'm 51, were probably told that was one of the signifiers of how well you were doing as a person, is if you found a man. So that's a whole interesting little sidelight, and obviously I have some issues with that. Going to comments before I talk myself into a problem. Tanya says, it is scary to put yourself out there. I wasn't empowered to do it till this year, and it is still foreign. And yeah, it is scary to put yourself out there, because if you put yourself out there, you get people who will tell you you're a bitch, or you're abrasive, or who do you think you are, or any number of things. And so, yeah, it is very scary standing up and saying, I did this. This is my accomplishment. I did this, and I deserve the credit for doing it, is also very scary, because we're not taught to do that. We're not taught to, well, I'm not going to say everybody's not, but society in general doesn't really reward women as much for taking pride in their accomplishments. Women are rewarded for taking pride in their children, in their home, in having a happy husband. When it comes to work or pursuits of that nature, creative pursuits, you have the outliers, but for the most part, women don't get rewarded as much for taking pride in those kinds of things, which is sad. And I think this is totally true. Jillian, hi, I'm very glad you're here. Thank you for joining us. And Carolyn, I think you're totally right. As mothers, we need to speak to our sons differently also. And I think this is already starting to happen. If you look at subsequent generations, how they relate to each other and how they think about things is different than like the generation I was raised in, which was really sadly still very stereotypical in a lot of ways. So, but I agree. I think as mothers and fathers, we need to model behavior, and we need to speak to our sons. And it doesn't even have to be if you're a parent, if you're an aunt or an uncle, if you have friends with kids, if you interact with kids on any level. model different behavior, give them different messages, tell them different things, because we know that how we talk and what we say and what we model influences what people think and what they do. So let's make sure that the models that we're putting out there are good ones. And I think this is right, what Jillian has to say here too. That's why people can see our work as hobbies or crafting and not manufacturing or production based. Sure. I mean, how many times have you heard a business run by a female described as a little business? Or, it's a hobby business, or it's a crafting business. And I will guarantee you that if you had a man and a woman running the exact same, say it was an embroidery business, and they had the exact same machines and they were both running them out of the second bedroom of their houses, the female-owned business would be much more likely to be described as a little business or a home business or a hobby business than the male-owned one would, even if the circumstances were exactly the same, which is sad. But it also says something about how we think about women running businesses, and the language that we use. Change the language, the perception changes. So that's why we all need to be really, really aware of the things that we say and how we refer to women and how we refer to their businesses and how we refer to ourselves. And let's see what Carolyn has to say here. I'm enjoying seeing how my son and daughter are raising some fearless daughters that are rewarded for who they are, not what they look like. They both are allowed to have their personality shine through with respect. And yeah, I mean, you still have to have standards for behavior, but I think you need to let young women be who they are just as much as you need to let young men. And unfortunately for women, for a very, very long time, there were restrictive standards of behavior on what women could do and how they were supposed to behave. And that led to the last word I want to talk about here, which is this word. Now, this is a good word. If you've actually wronged someone, if you've done something that you know is a trespass, or you hurt somebody, or you had a fight or whatever it is, this is a good word. I'm sorry. I apologize. The problem is that for women, it becomes not necessarily, I'm apologizing for wronging you. It becomes, I'm apologizing for existing. I'm apologizing for breathing air. I'm apologizing for daring to take up 5 seconds of your time with my question. And women apologize a lot. A lot. And we don't even really know that we're doing it a lot of the time. We don't even really, it's a linguistic tick. And I'm going to actually pull this off for a minute because there's a couple of good comments here. And I love that we're having this discussion. And I'm so grateful that you're all here. Jean said, I believe that having a home-based business will be more acceptable, less diminished going forward now that many lines of work are home-based. I agree with you, Jean. I still think we need to be careful about how we talk about female home-based businesses, because I don't think the problem has ever necessarily been that the business was home-based. I think the problem was who owned the business and how we talked about the businesses that were owned by women. So I do agree that, I mean, the pandemic has changed a lot of things, and working at home is definitely one of them. But I think there's also a kind of an isn't that cute pat on the head sort of thing about women who own home-based businesses that men don't necessarily see. And so I think we still need to be careful about how we talk about women who own home-based businesses. But I do agree that home-based businesses are going to become more the norm. And apparently Sandy Jo agrees with that as well. And I also think that Martha has a good point too. To be fair, I don't think we offer respect to men who choose to stay home and run a household, raise children while their wives work. And you're not wrong, Martha. Anything that goes against what we consider social norms, which was for a very, very long time, men went out and women stayed home. And then women started working, and that created a whole set of circumstances. And now there are men who are going, you know what? I want to stay home. I want to work from home. I want to take care of my kids and, keep the house, and that's what I want to do. And we don't give those men the respect that they should get, the respect that any parent who's staying home, raising children and keeping a home and managing all the things that go with that should get. And, I think if you're a stay-at-home father, you probably do run into a lot of prejudice and a lot of weird things, and that's sad. So I totally agree with you there. But I do want to get back to, I got sidetracked by these great comments, which please keep them coming because I love what they're adding to the discussion. But we need to get back to this word, sorry, which is not just a game. But women tend to apologize a lot of times when they don't need to. They tend to apologize when they ask a question or when they make a request, or simply just for taking up space in a lot of cases. And the message behind all the I'm sorries is, I don't think I'm worthy. I don't think I'm not worth your time. I'm not worth you waiting for me. I'm not worth you hearing my idea, or it's kind of how do I want to put this the right way? It's kind of a preemptive strike. I know you're going to say I'm silly, so I'm going to say I'm sorry about the weakness of my idea before you say I'm silly. And it's a way to kind of put yourself out there without really putting yourself out there, if that makes any sense. It's kind of like, I'm doing this, but I'm tentatively doing this. And the problem with that is, again, with a lot of things, it makes you look tentative. It makes you look as though you don't necessarily believe in your own self-worth. And if you don't believe in your own self-worth, why is anybody else going to? And I've seen this in a couple different places, but there have been a few different people who've written articles where they say, instead of saying sorry, change it to thank you. So instead of saying, sorry, I'm late, say, thank you for waiting for me. Instead of saying, sorry to take up your time with my idea, say, thank you for listening to my idea. Phrase it in a way that assumes that you're worth it, that you're worth waiting for, that you're worth listening to, that you're worth hearing, whatever it is. And don't apologize. And don't apologize in emails. Don't apologize in conversation. I mean, obviously, if you really owe someone an apology, if you need to apologize for something because you've wronged someone in some way, or you made a mistake or whatever it was, then yes, definitely apologize, because that's an appropriate time to do that. But if you're apologizing simply as a linguistic tick, or to soften the message, or to kind of make yourself smaller in the space that you're in, don't do that. It's not a good plan. So another thing that I wanted to talk about is I found a list of, this was a study that was done in 2018, and it was a list of the different ways that men and women were described in job evaluations. And I thought this was really interesting, so I wanted to show it to you. And the findings of this study were that managers used more positive words to describe men in performance reviews, and more negative ones to describe women. And if you look at this, it's very interesting. Men get positive words like analytical, competent, athletic, dependable, confident, versatile, articulate, level-headed, logical, and practical. Women get compassionate, enthusiastic, energetic, and organized. Now, what I think is interesting about this is almost all of the words that have to do with thinking or intelligence are used for men. Women get more, well, with the exception of organized, which isn't really a feeling word, but they get more soft words, compassionate, enthusiastic, energetic, which makes me think of, and organized, which either makes me think of moms or cheerleaders, which might not necessarily have been what was intended, but women can't be analytical. They can't be versatile. They can't be articulate. They can't be level-headed. I think it's interesting if you look at the words that are used, that the men get most of the thinking words and the women get most of the feeling words. And even the feeling words that the women get are very kind of narrow and, if you think about it, kind of supporting words. Compassionate people, enthusiastic people support events. Energetic people bring energy to the and yes, I think this is true, Sandy Joe. Women get more unprofessional words. We get fluff words. True. I think that's true in some ways. The words that are used to describe women tend to be a little more fluffy. But I also think it's interesting what words are used in the negative category, which are the two categories in the yellow. Men get arrogant and irresponsible. Women get inept, selfish, frivolous, passive, scattered, opportunistic, gossip, excitable, vain, panicky, temperamental, and indecisive. So, again, equally as with the positive words, men can't be scattered, men can't be frivolous, men can't be selfish, men can't be vain or temperamental or indecisive, but you don't see those words used to describe them. You just see them used to describe women. So I think this is an interesting illustration of how we tend to think about men and women. And you can argue that words don't have gender, words are just words. But if you look at this list and you didn't know that the set of words were used to describe men and women, but if you were told, okay, candidate A is using the words on the left side of the screen and candidate B is being described by the words on the right side of the screen, which one are you going to hire? You got to think about these things. And also, you have to ask, why aren't women recognized for being analytical or for being competent or for being athletic? And why aren't men recognized for being enthusiastic or energetic? What is the values in society that are telling us that enthusiastic or energetic men, there's something weird about them, and analytical and competent women, there's something weird about them? And I mean, we could go into the whole thing about if you're an analytical woman, you're considered cold and all that sort of stuff. And that's a whole issue in and of itself. But I think it bears some consideration. Why do we use the words we use to talk about women versus how we talk about men? And an argument that happens a lot is that, you know, I can't deal with this stuff. I can't deal with having to talk about and think about everything I say all the time. And nobody's asking you to do that. The way that you've learned to speak is the way that you've learned to speak. I'm just saying, be a little more aware. Take an extra second and think about your word choice a little bit, because it does matter. It matters because all of us who make a conscious choice to choose our words carefully, to talk about women in ways that don't necessarily emphasize appearance, to say I instead of we, when we as individuals have done something that deserves recognition or credit, and to take that credit and to pursue that credit because we deserve it and not be ashamed of that. The more that we do this stuff, the more we become good role models for the women that come after us, the more hopefully and potentially we make things easier for the women that come after us. And if, as Carolyn said, we also make an effort to influence the young men or even the old men in our lives to be more aware of how they speak about women and how they describe women, then we make things better for everybody, because the ultimate goal of all this should be fully actualized human beings that are doing the best that they can and being the best they can be at whatever they want to do. And I'm not advocating, nor do I think it's possible, that we can erase gender entirely from the equation, nor do I want to, because I like men. And I think men bring a lot of great things to the world. But I think we need to look at how we're talking about ourselves and how we're talking to each other about ourselves, how we're talking to men about ourselves, how we're talking to our children about ourselves. And there's, if you've done any therapy or anything, which I'll admit to some, there's the phrase that often gets said, which is, you teach people how to treat you by what you accept, or just you teach people how to treat you. If you allow people to bulldoze your boundaries, they're going to learn that they can bulldoze your boundaries. If you allow people to make you small, then you're going to be small. It's sad, but that's how it is. Am I going to say that anybody that calls themselves a girl boss is totally wrong-headed? And no, it's a choice. I personally think it's a bad choice. That's not a word that I like. But if it's a word that you're comfortable with and that works for you, it's up to you. Everybody gets to choose. Just be aware that the choices that you make can reflect on other women. And this is not, all of us in our individual daily life are not going to torpedo the female half of the human race if we call ourselves girl bosses. It's not going to happen. But if we each make a slightly more nuanced choice, or if we think about it an extra second and choose a different word, maybe we start a little ripple that joins up with a bunch of other ripples, and eventually we change things for the better. And it's just being a little bit more mindful. It's just thinking about it a little bit more. It's just having discussions like the one we're having here and the one we're having in the Women in Garment Decoration group. It's all those things that if we individually each do a little bit, we make a difference. And the more of us that do it, the bigger the difference we make. And that's all I'm saying. And, I want to make it really clear that I'm not here to judge anybody's choices. People choose what they choose, and it's not my job to say you're wrong or you're right. And I don't want that job, honestly. I'm just bringing some stuff up and throwing it out there and having a discussion and hoping that maybe some of the stuff that I'm putting out there is going to impact some people's minds and maybe change things a little bit for the better. That's all I'm doing. So, judgment is not on my agenda. That's not what I'm trying to do. But I am starting to lose my voice. So we're almost at an hour now. So I think I will say thank you to everybody. It is entirely possible that there will be a guest on the show next week. I am talking with a divorce attorney right now about coming on, and I think that's going to happen. This is a rough time of year to get guests, but it looks like it's entirely possible, so I will keep you updated on that. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for the amazing comments. I'm really excited to see all the really cool comments that you guys left. I appreciate it so much, and I will see you next Wednesday. Thanks, everybody. Bye.